The Auburn Tigers are set to host the Mississippi State Bulldogs coming up Tuesday inside of Neville Arena. Let's talk about the game.
The Auburn Express. You are now listening to the War Report, Longtown Podcast. With your boy Ike Jones.
We are here inside of Lobtown on the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report, talking a little Auburn versus Mississippi State, a matchup of two top 25 teams. The Auburn Tigers, the new number one team in the country after the loss that Tennessee had last week. Auburn securing that spot with both of their wins last week on the road versus Texas and South Carolina. Now Auburn, the number one in the AP poll. But how long can they maintain that with the absence of Janai Broome? Mississippi State has been a tough team so far in the conference. They are the number 15 team in the country coming into Auburn with probably, listen, Auburn, Coach Bruce Pearl said this in his press conference that Auburn is going to have a target on them, whether they were number one or number two. They were number two before today. They're number one today. That's not going to lessen the target on Auburn's back for teams coming to play them or when Auburn steps inside of their arena. So Auburn just needs to do a good job of handling business, even without their leading scorer, shot blocker, rebounder, assist man, Janai Broome. They're going to have to figure out a way to do this against a tough Mississippi State team. This game was going to be tough, whether Janai Broome was playing or not, with the physicality and the defense that Mississippi State presents on an annual basis under Coach Chris Jans. But now they found a new offensive identity. They found an ability to go out there and score points, a little more consistency, which makes them an even tougher team than they were last year. This Mississippi State team has yet to really be challenged. Well, I won't say they haven't been challenged because they definitely had a challenge in their last game. But Mississippi State is going to come out, I think, after this loss. They just lost a game with their hair on fire, trying to stay above or in the race for the SEC regular season title. And it's going to be a challenging game for the Auburn Tigers. As far as doing things without Janai Broome in this first game, this was a reality that Auburn almost had to face when they were going to be going into a contest earlier this season when Janai Broome had hurt his shoulder and they were going to be playing Purdue and Birmingham. The question was whether or not Janai was even going to play that game. He was able to play and played well in that one. This time they're going to face the reality. No Janai Broome in this game. Coach Bruce Pearl did confirm that in his press conference that Janai would not be playing in this one. So how is Auburn going to supplement that? If you heard us talk about this a little bit on the weekend tailgate, I tend to think that the offensive identity or how they're going to play more consistency, I think it needs to flow through a guy like Chad Baker-Mazara, who can be a smaller version of what Janai brings to you, a defensive matchup nightmare who can pass well out of the high post, who can step out and shoot at a higher proficiency than Janai Broome can. Better ball handler than Janai. He's not as physically dominant on the interior, but you can definitely place him at the high post and run a lot of the same high-low offense with him and do some different things out of the pick and roll. So very interested to see how that's going to happen for Chad Baker-Mazara. Hopefully he is going to get an opportunity, one that I'm absolutely sure that he will relish being more of a focal point in the offense. You've also got guys that are out there, and this can be a very wing-driven team now with guys like Miles Kelly, who has been a leading scorer for his teams in the past when he was at Georgia Tech, who can go out there and they can put the ball in his hands and allow him to create off of the dribble. He is not as good a passer as a guy like Chad Baker-Mazara or even as Janai Broome would be, but he definitely is a dynamic scorer that can go out there and make it tough on teams. And then you've got Denver Jones, who has been a leading scorer when he was at his previous stop at Florida International. He was a guy that was able to be the number one guy. And now that he's been playing more point guard, can still continue to be distributive in his quest for being able to get you more buckets. So it's going to be interesting to see how this Auburn team decides to deploy those three gentlemen in particular. And then you have the question of whether or not you're going to move a guy like Chaney Johnson into the starting lineup now as your four-man with Dylan Cardwell being out there, because you're going to need the physicality of those two out there and have them stay out of foul trouble. But what does Chaney Johnson provide for you? Not as good a passer as Janai Broome, but definitely an athletic guy who can put the ball on the floor, can score from really any distance. He can be a three-level scorer for you, has played a primary scorer role as well at his previous stop prior to being at Auburn University when he was at at UAH. So he knows how to be the guy on a team. Hasn't done that at this level, at the D1 level yet, but definitely has the ability to be a guy who can fill it up and score. You remember last year when Auburn was without Jay Will and they needed someone to step in the Georgia game, as Coach Bruce Pro mentioned. Chaney Johnson was the guy that stepped in and was able to fill in while Jay Will was away. So he's going to have to be in that sort of role again for the team going into this game versus Mississippi State at home. And then lastly, you're going to have to supplement some of those minutes with guys off of the bench like Turtle, right? Like Jaheim Hudson's going to have to play bigger minutes in this game. Chris Moore is going to have to give you some quality minutes in this game and give you really some points in this one. Usually you don't really rely on Chris Moore for points, but he's going to have to get you some hustle rebounds. He's going to have to get you some second chance points in this one, I think, for Auburn to be in a good spot. Not necessarily the step out and shoot threes guy that he has been a little bit this season, knocking down a couple of open threes, but he definitely needs to be active on the board, good defensively. And I think the key for this Auburn team in this game versus Mississippi State is going to be how they are physically able to control the glass, whether that is securing defensive rebounds to limit the second chance points of Mississippi State, or how they are physically in defense against this team that's going to go to the paint and they're going to try to draw fouls. Can you be physical, defend without fouling, and get yourself in a position where you're at least forcing tough shots for some very tough shot makers on this team, limit them to one possession? And then on the offensive end, how well are you going to be able to compete on the interior versus a team that's going to definitely try to make sure that you're getting tough looks now that you don't have a primary scorer there on the interior? Who are going to be the guys that are going to step up? Chaney Johnson, Jaheim Hudson, both capable in the lane of being those guys. Dylan Cardwell's going to have to get you a couple of points on that, points on the offensive end, whether that is rim running or actually catching the ball on the post and going to work and giving you a couple of moves. So going to be interesting to see how they decide to change what they're doing offensively based upon this situation with Janai Broome. When you flip it over to the other side and you start talking about the Mississippi State Bulldogs, it really starts with a couple of guys. Primarily, it's going to be Josh Hubbard, right? Josh Hubbard is a guy who came into his own as a true freshman last year, has continued to blossom, gotten a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical. He was already a very physical athlete, able to absorb contact and finish through contact. Really high leaper, not a tall guy, but a high leaper. And he's a guy that Auburn's going to figure out how to make it tough for him, or say, Josh Hubbard, you're going to have to score 60 on us tonight in order to win this game, or shutting everybody else's water off. So I don't know which approach they're going to take with him, if they're going to kind of do what they did with a guy like what they did with Monmouth against them, which is say, okay, you guys have a primary scorer. We're basically going to box and one him, make it really tough for him to get catches and make everybody else figure out how to get points and make someone else step up and be the guy. Or if they're going to say, all right, we're going to play it straight up, but we're definitely going to switch everything and make sure that Josh Hubbard's getting tough looks and you guys have to run some stuff to make sure he's getting the ball. That's going to be an interesting strategic thing. And then Cam Matthews, who is kind of the heart and soul of this team, particularly in that physicality standpoint, a guy who is going to make it tough for your bigs to stay out of foul trouble because of the fierce way in which he drives. And, he's a power forward, but he's going to bring the ball up for them, and he's going to, get downhill versus your guys. He's going to be a tough guy on the offensive glass to keep there away from the basketball in those ways. So it's going to be interesting to see how they decide to cover him and what bodies they're going to throw at him to make sure that he stays off of the offensive glass. And can they be disciplined in the way that they defend when he gets to the rim, to be physical with him in the ways that you need to be, but not get into foul trouble when he starts to get downhill for him. So that's going to be an interesting thing. But I thought it was one of the things that I liked to hear from Coach Pearl. He's like, listen, I don't know that we're the best team in the country right now without Janai Broome, but we deserve the number one spot based upon the resume that we have. But he also said, we're not going to make any excuses. We have enough talent to be able to win this basketball game, even though Janai Broome is not in it. We're not going to make that as an excuse as to why we're not able to go out there and get a victory. There's enough other guys that can step up. And it's not going to just be one person. It needs to be a collective effort of guys that are stepping up and doing this. And I want to talk about, I've already talked about Chaney Johnson, I already talked about Chad Baker-Mazara, but one person I want to highlight in specific that I think has shown the propensity to be able to step up, and I think is going to be a unique challenge when he comes into the game, is going to be the true freshman Tahad Pettiford, because this is a game where there's going to be another dynamic scoring point guard that's going to be out there. And can Tahad, who is a guy who is a tough shot maker in himself, a smaller guard, go out there and while he's on the floor, be efficient and match a guy like Josh Hubbard in his ability, really just in the plus minus numbers? It doesn't need to be in strictly scoring. He needs to, but can he distribute the ball effectively? Can he be out there and have effective offensive minutes and not be a liability defensively against a very dynamic scorer in Josh Hubbard, and not feel like he has to go, wreck lead ball and go shot for shot with him, but just understand I need to operate the offense and do all of the things that make me a dynamic guard in this league. Again, not necessarily a natural point guard, but has had to play that role for Auburn when you don't have what you perceived to be a guy in the transfer portal and JP Pegues who was going to step into that guard role for you. Can Tahad Pettiford be able to be that guy for you offensively against a dynamic guard like Josh Hubbard out there at home inside of Neville Arena? It's going to be interesting to see how this matchup goes against two teams that really hang their hat on defense and physicality, and both of those teams looking to try to continue to be at the top of the rankings in the SEC as well as in the country going into this game. But this team from Mississippi State has been pretty efficient in scoring just about 84 points per game. That's different from a team last year that was scoring in the high 60s, right? So they're definitely a different team than the Mississippi State teams of the past, but also a team that you've seen can be susceptible to getting, if it's a team that they get into like the track meet type of stuff with, that's not really how that they want to play. They can go that style, but can Auburn turn up the tempo on them and really get them out of their character and forcing some shots that they don't need to? That's the thing that we're going to need to see in this game, because I think Auburn has the horses. The question is, are they going to have the physicality and the toughness to be able to deal with it? We will find out the answers to all of those things as the game progresses on Tuesday. Make sure you guys are locked in, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. Can Auburn pull off the win minus Janai Broome at home versus a tough Mississippi State team? I want to hear your thoughts on that. And who do you think is going to be the person that needs to step up? Make sure you do that. Before you get out of here and do any of those things and you comment, make sure you give us a thumbs up, a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share the content with somebody else. We'll be back at you with more great Auburn War Report content later. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.